What's good? It's Wood. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. We have Claressa Shields, 12 wins and 0 losses, defending her WBA, WBC, and IBF female middleweight titles against Savannah Marshall, 12 wins and 0 losses, and Savannah Marshall will be defending her WBO female middleweight title. So this Shields versus Marshall fight is to become the undisputed female middleweight champion, which will have been the second time Claressa Shields would have earned that distinction if she is to beat Savannah Marshall. Claressa Shields from Flint, Michigan is actually one of the most remarkable stories in boxing, male or female. And, you know, coming from a tough town like Flint, Michigan, and having been abused as a child, for Claressa Shields to then accomplish everything that she has up until this point, it is pretty outstanding. She is a two-time Olympic gold medalist. She won the gold in 2012 and in 2016. And as a professional, she is a former undisputed middleweight champion, former undisputed light middleweight champion. We're talking 154. And she's a former unified 168-pound title holder. So she's a 3-division champion. 2 out of those 3 divisions, she became undisputed. And, you know, for instance, remains the only person to have ever officially beaten Franchon Cruz-Dezurn, who is now the 168-pound undisputed champion. In Claressa Shields' first professional fight, she beat Cruz-Dezurn. So she does have some notable wins in her, you know, still pretty young, but extraordinarily accomplished career. So again, outstanding professional and a legendary amateur, but her one amateur defeat came at the hands of Savannah Marshall, who is, again, currently the WBO female middleweight champion. So she won the vacant WBO belt, her being Savannah Marshall, beating Hannah Rankin via 7th round TKO, and has retained that WBO belt over the past 3 fights, knocking out all 3 of those WBO title challengers. And unlike Claressa Shields, who out of her 12 wins has 2 knockouts out of 12 wins, Savannah Marshall out of her 12 wins has 10 knockouts. So this is a very interesting matchup, and there's obviously a lot of bad blood, a lot of trash talk we've seen between the two, and they do have some common opponents. They've both beaten Sydney LeBlanc, they've both beaten Hannah Rankin, they've both beaten Femke Hermans, and Claressa Shields beat all 3 of them via decision, and Savannah Marshall beat 2 out of those 3 via knockout. So this is a very dangerous fight for Claressa Shields, and if you look at the odds, which are nearly dead even, they slightly skew Savannah Marshall. I think Savannah Marshall's like a -100, whereas Claressa Shields might be like a +110 or +125. It's very, very even, but it slightly tilts towards Savannah Marshall. And this fight, by the way, is going to take place in the O2 Arena in London, England. So that's something else to consider. When you're looking at these 10 2-minute rounds, just know that you're probably going to get a major crowd reaction to any time Savannah Marshall looks like she's doing something. So if this fight goes the distance, I'm really considering that factor and how that might play into the judges' scoring. What I am not really considering when evaluating Claressa Shields versus Savannah Marshall is Claressa Shields' 2021 foray into mixed martial arts. Basically, she put her boxing career on just a brief pause. I mean, she did box in 2021. She boxed in March of 2021. But for the rest of 2021, in June and October, she participated in mixed martial arts fights under the PFL banner. Her first was a TKO win in the 3rd round, and then the second one was a decision loss where she was getting taken down repeatedly. There was a little bit of ground and pound, but she didn't get like devastated. She got beaten pretty handedly, but it was still a split decision. So it was a competitive decision loss in her second MMA fight, which, I mean, Claressa Shields, she was daring to be great, and basically she wasn't getting paid enough to box, quite quite frankly. She wasn't able to secure super lucrative fights. So she started going off into PFL, fought a couple times, 1-1 was her record there, but she was basically pushing and testing herself, which, I mean, it's not a great look. And the same thing applies to male boxing. Like, I remember when James Toney fought Randy Couture. I'm a big fan of both boxing and mixed martial arts. And I remember when James Toney fought Randy Couture with very little effort, like took James Toney down and basically started to circle while having Toney on his back and just worked on a triangle choke and basically got James Toney to tap out in the first round. Wasn't a good look, just as it's not a great look when, former UFC heavyweight champion Tim Sylvia fought an old Ray Mercer. I think this was actually still a mixed martial arts fight. I don't think this was a boxing match, but I'd have to recheck. But basically in the stand-up, Ray Mercer just basically one punch, caught Tim Sylvia, just put him out. Very quick work. And so these cross sporting events where you've got either the boxer engaging in a mixed martial arts fight or vice versa, it usually doesn't play well to the visitor. So Claressa Shields, in my opinion, she impressed. The fact that she was competitive and won her first one, I looked at that as being very impressive. Like, it wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when she would lose a mixed martial arts bout. But for the sake of this Shields versus Marshall fight, I'm not really factoring that in because it truly is apples to oranges. Like, if Savannah Marshall participated in mixed martial arts, I wouldn't expect her to have across-the-board success either. So I'm not really considering that, although, again, it's not a great look if you're presenting yourself as the baddest person on the planet and then the fight fans see you get beaten up, even though it's an mixed martial arts affair. It just looks like, in a street fight, who would win, this person or that person? Well, the mixed martial artist has an argument, right? If they can take you down, there is an argument to be had, but there are several arguments to be had in, fights versus these sporting events. But yeah, Claressa Shields returned to boxing in February of 2022 and beat Emma Kozin via unanimous decision. So she basically had success all the way up until that break, and then she's had success since in her one fight since returning to the ring. And again, it wasn't even that big of a layoff. When in totality, even considering both of those mixed martial arts fights, it was only about 11 months between boxing fights for Claressa Shields. So what I am looking at between Claressa Shields and Savannah Marshall, and what I expect is, I think that Claressa Shields, she's got to establish a jab. That might be the best punch in her arsenal. Like, if there is a fight to reference for Claressa Shields, this might be her best win to date against Christina Hammer, who is about the same height as Savannah Marshall. Savannah Marshall's about 5'11 and a half. Christina Hammer is about 5'11. Claressa Shields is about 5'8. So she's going to be giving up about 3 inches in height to Savannah Marshall. So Claressa Shields, it was a pretty even first round where Christina Hammer had some success kind of backing Claressa Shields up, who was playing the game pretty patiently. But basically from the second round on, Claressa Shields took control, kept Christina Hammer out of rhythm, basically was very good at feinting. Claressa Shields, you'll see her do a lot of that. And so she gets her reaction, and she's got a very quick jab, throws a nice right hand on top of the jab. Sometimes she'll throw those 4-punch flurries, which, when she gets into the flurrying, she's going to have to be very careful against Savannah Marshall. Savannah Marshall is much more of a fluid style of fighter. She's very loose with the hands. Sometimes she keeps the guard up, but sometimes she feels comfortable enough to kind of keep them down here. And she's always just kind of doing this sort of in-flow movements with her shoulders. And she just looks very fluid out there. And she's looking to shoot her quick jab, and she gets it, out there pretty quickly. And again, she's got the height advantage over most of her opponents. So she's got her hands kind of down here, kind of moving. She'll throw the jab. And then if you come in, watch out for her right hand uppercut. And it's a lead too. She'll throw a counter right hand uppercut without setting it up with the lead hand, which can also get you in a lot of trouble when you try to load up. Well, she throws it pretty quickly, but when you're throwing a unset up power hand, your backhand uppercut without setting it up with the lead, it could leave you vulnerable. But Savannah Marshall's a pretty smart fighter as well. So I don't think that she's going to totally throw a naked right uppercut without setting it up, knowing how quick Claressa Shields' jab is. So Claressa Shields, very good jab, good right hand on top of it. Although, like, I don't think that she lands that right hand as flush as you would think somebody of her caliber and her pedigree would land it. I mean, she catches some people with that right hand, but more often than not, the right hand that she's catching people with isn't the power right, but it's more the 1, 2, 3, 4 type of right hand where it's in a flurry and she's backing the opponent up where the opponent already has their guard up. So it's a partially landing right hand that's kind of getting through the guard or sometimes around the guard, because she'll go 1, 2, 3, and then the fourth punch will be more of a right hook. But again, it's because of her hand speed, her boxing IQ, and her setups that put her in a position to let those fast combinations go. But again, you've got to be careful when you're throwing those 4-punch combinations against somebody as powerful as Savannah Marshall. Savannah Marshall's knockout percentage is very unusually high. And she'll knock you out with the uppercut. She'll knock you out with the straight right hand. She'll knock you out with the left hook, as she did in her last fight against Femke Hermans, which was basically her side of the audition for the Claressa Shields versus Savannah Marshall showdown. So when Claressa Shields beat Emma Kozin and it was her being Claressa Shields' UK debut, granted it wasn't in England, it was in Wales, but Savannah Marshall was in the house for that, right? And so they had the face-off afterwards where they were talking trash back and forth. But Claressa Shields beat Kozin via unanimous decision, and that was her side of the audition. And then Savannah Marshall knocked out Femke Hermans in the third round, devastatingly. It was like she first threw a right hand when she had Femke Hermans backing up into the corner. She threw the right hand, followed it up with a nice left hook right on the money, put her flat on the back. Game's over. That was Savannah Marshall's side of the audition. And for that fight, I believe Claressa Shields was in the house. So, yeah, this is a very important fight. This is basically the next best thing, or the next biggest thing that you could get to that, Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano. This is just a couple divisions up from where those fights take place. So Claressa Shields, on most people's, women's pound for pound list, she might be just one ranking behind Katie Taylor. Like for a long time, it was Katie Taylor 1, Claressa Shields 2. Now some people might put Amanda Serrano 2, but in more lists than not, I see Claressa Shields as number 2, and then probably Amanda Serrano 3. And then you get your, Jessica McCaskills and, Michaela Mayer and Senicia Estradas. But yeah, Claressa Shields versus Savannah Marshall, hugely consequential fight. Pretty much a legacy fight. This is the big fight that both Shields and Savannah Marshall need. So when I look at this fight, I see 2 different reference fights that come to mind, and for different reasons. One of those fights is Devin Haney versus George Kambosos, or should I say George Kambosos versus Devin Haney 1. And that's because Claressa Shields is going to be in enemy territory, and she doesn't have knockout power. So with the crowd enthusiasm and, the influence that the crowd might have on judges, and the fact that she doesn't have that knockout power kind of makes it look like an uphill battle on the surface, to where for Claressa Shields to earn a decision win, you get the feeling that she's got to win by like 3 rounds or 2 or 3 rounds to then edge a split decision or a 6 rounds to 4 type of victory here. Like, she's got to look like she won 7 rounds to 3 to win a split decision where the prevailing scorecard gives it 6 rounds to 4. Almost like you've got to kind of adjust the rounds by 1, expecting that the judges are going to throw it 1 round more in Savannah Marshall's favor, then maybe the viewing audience will see it. It's a possibility. So, and that's kind of the feeling that I had with Kambosos versus Haney 1 in Melbourne, Australia, which it did turn out to be the case, right? Because we saw Devin Haney look like he won like 10 out of the 12 rounds, to then earn a much closer than that type of decision. So I think that this is a bit of an uphill battle for Claressa Shields. She's going to have to out-volume Savannah Marshall, and she's going to have to somewhat demonstratively control the rounds, especially if she's not scoring any knockdowns here. Not only knockout, but knockdowns here. And then the other fight that comes to mind is basically the rivalry between Shane Mosley and Vernon Forrest. What I mean by that is Claressa Shields is by far like the more, accomplished fighter. Again, 2-division undisputed, 3-division champion. Even in this division right now, Savannah Marshall only holds a WBO belt. Now, Savannah Marshall has a very good amateur career. She's won world championships before, just like Claressa Shields has won world championships before. But Claressa Shields is the more accomplished amateur and professional, but like Shane Mosley and Vernon Forrest, where Shane Mosley was the one who, went up from lightweight to welterweight to beat Oscar De La Hoya and become, basically he was the pound for pound best fighter in the sport for a moment in time. Shane Mosley was. But then he defended that belt against, the mandatory Vernon Forrest, who had beaten him as an amateur multiple times, just like Savannah Marshall has beaten and is the only person to beat Claressa Shields as an amateur. And then at the professional level, Vernon Forrest beat Shane Mosley, not once, but twice, back-to-back fights. Took the titles from Shane and then beat him again to retain the titles. Shane Mosley never regained his pound-for-pound status after that. He went on to have some great wins after that, but he was never on top of boxing like he was for that moment of time. So there is a possibility that Savannah Marshall just has Claressa Shields' number here, regardless of who's the more accomplished fighter up until this point. But will that happen in Shields versus Marshall? So I think that Claressa Shields will be the more voluminous puncher here. I do think that she's going to have the better jab. Even though Marshall herself has a very good jab, I think Claressa Shields will be able to get her jab off more effectively. Now, can she take Savannah Marshall out of her flow? Because if Savannah Marshall is flowing, then she will likely be backing Claressa Shields up. And I don't think that that is a fight that Claressa Shields can win. I think Claressa Shields has to back Savannah Marshall up and keep her out of rhythm. Can she do that? I think that she could do that in more moments. I basically think that Claressa Shields can control more moments out of these 20 minutes of action. Again, 10 2-minute rounds, right? I think that Claressa Shields can control more of the action than Savannah Marshall, but I don't know if she could keep Marshall from having big moments, meaning either a knockdown or visibly hurting Claressa Shields, because it's Savannah Marshall who has the outsized power here. And it could be, it could be the right uppercut, or it could be the overhand right, or it could be in the middle of a long combination, a long exchange, where Savannah Marshall could catch Claressa Shields with a left hook. Can Claressa Shields hurt Marshall? Yes. But will she drop Marshall or stop Marshall? I don't see that being the case. So I actually think that this is going to come down to the wire. I think it's going to be a very close decision. A part of me really thinks that Savannah Marshall is going to get the love on the scorecards and is going to win a split decision or a very close unanimous decision, like 6 rounds to 4. But then a slightly bigger part of me thinks that Claressa Shields will find, because here's another thing. Claressa Shields is a very good defensive fighter. Savannah Marshall very good defensively as well. And again, neither Shields nor Marshall has fought anyone like the other. This is by far both of their biggest step-up opponent, by far. I think that Claressa Shields' defense is going to keep Marshall from being able to just reliably touch her with that lead hand, which means that Savannah Marshall is going to have to go fishing with the big right hands and with the left hooks. I think Claressa Shields is going to find Savannah Marshall more consistently with the lead hand. Not so consistently, I believe, with the right over the top, but with the lead hand. And I think that that's going to control some of the action here. I think that Claressa Shields is actually going to pull off the very close, and I mean razor close, probably split or majority decision win. There's also a big likelihood that this could result in a draw. but I think that Claressa Shields can win like a split decision or majority decision win, where one judge might have it a draw, or one judge can have it for Marshall, and then the other two have it for Claressa Shields, something like 6 rounds to 4. I think this is going to be a very close fight. I think Claressa Shields is going to get buzzed, visibly buzzed in a couple moments, but I don't think she's going to get dropped. If she gets dropped, then that obviously makes it much more of an uphill climb for Claressa Shields to win a decision, but I don't think she's going to get dropped, and I think she's going to pull off a very close and competitive decision win. But yeah, let me know what you think of Claressa Shields versus Savannah Marshall. I'm super glad that this fight is happening for both fighters. This is just another one of those major fights that women's boxing needs, and it's coming in the same year as Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano. And by the way, that Michaela Mayer versus Alicia Baumgardner fight is on the undercard here. Another key fight for both fighters. So yeah, let me know what you think about Shields versus Marshall. Again, I'm picking Shields via narrow, and I'm almost kind of going against conventional wisdom here because this fight is taking place in the O2 Arena in London, England, and that is one of those factors that almost has me just kind of edging it towards Savannah Marshall. So I'm kind of going against conventional wisdom, and I might regret doing that, but I'm going to go with Claressa Shields via razor close decisions, probably split or majority decision win for Claressa Shields. And again, that will be a legacy defining win for whoever wins this fight. I just hope it doesn't turn out to be a draw, unless it ends up being a classic that results in the draw. Then maybe it benefits both fighters' legacy. But yeah, let me know what you think about Shields versus Marshall in the comments. And please, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.